So today on Sportsfall, we're looking at the legend of Andre Red Light Racicot. For many, he is the worst goalie in Montreal Canes history. On a personal level, a lot of people I've talked to, media pals and fans of the NHL, said he's getting a bum rap through the years because he was never as bad as everybody made him out to be. But if your nickname is Red Light, that's comparable to a pro baseball player whose nickname would be Strikeout. Now, a little bit of history of Andre Racicot. He ended up with the Montreal Canadiens franchise after a somewhat, tepid Quebec Major Junior Hockey League career. He was first majorly recognized in the Q for a very consistent season in 1989 with the Granby Bison, where he played in 54 games and in a very tough league, only gave up 4 goals a game. At the time in 1989, the Q high goal totals were very common. Now, after a short stint with the Sherbrooke Canadians, he ended up in 1991 getting a regular backup turn with the Habs. First season, not too bad, 320 average, and 92 up and down again, and was the backup. But when Racicot really came into focus was 1993, when Patrick Roy was the number one goalie for the Habs, and arguably the number one goalie on the planet. Andre had a really good statistical season, similar to Bunny LaRock what he had with Ken Dryden back in '77. In '93, Andre had 17 wins, 5 losses, 1 tie, with a respectable .339 average. But here's where the legend becomes myth and the myth becomes legend. In the playoffs, when Patrick Roy was injured in Game 5 in their divisional series against Quebec, Racicot had to be called in as a backup and gave up 2 very quick goals that almost led to Montreal losing the game in the series. The only reason why they won the game is Patrick came off the injury table in the back and played. From there on, it was mostly an up and down pro career with time in the AHL, IHL, East Coast Hockey League. Now, I think what the major problem with Racicot's career, and it's not his fault, he never came across as a very confident goalie. Very soft-spoken man. For the people in my circle who have met him, they're saying he's a very fine gentleman. But when you had great backups through the years, the Montreal Canadiens had, going back, Charlie Hodge, Esposito, Phil Muir, Buddy Rock, Brian Hayward, all these great players, he didn't come across as a confident goalie. And if you would watch him while he was playing, sure, he'd make the save, but you always considered there was something off in relation to the way he played. Either he wasn't following the play correctly like Patrick, and he didn't motivate too many Montreal Canadiens fans to look at him as a solid backup. See, Brian Hayward was like that. You had confidence in Brian Hayward because, he was a quality goalie, went off to a great career. Now, since 1993, there hasn't been any goalie in the Montreal system that has been comparable to him for a derision. Again, a lot of that is misplaced. He was a competent goalie. Like if Patrick Roy was an A, he was a B minus. Now, when people make their mind up about something, it's hard to get away. Now, don't forget, you play in Montreal, you get the press on your back all the time. You must produce. Even Bunny Rock was criticized one year where I think he won 20, 25 games and had one bad game against Boston, I think in fall of '76. He said, we need to get a new backup. The press was on him. Anyway, if you have a chance, if you go on some YouTube sites, look at Racicot, look at his playing style, you see where it's coming from. Again, a competent goalie, but I, as a journalist, as a sports editor, as a person who tells the truth, I had no confidence in him. And that Game 5 against Quebec in '93, where he basically looked like a chicken with its head cut off, or a deer in the headlights, whatever expression you want to use, he wasn't it for us. But again, he has the Stanley Cup ring. That's one more than I have, so I give him props on that. And when people look at his career, you can see that he was part of a lot of good minor league and European franchise after he left Montreal. He added quality to those teams, and again, for that, he has my respect. So if you do meet Andre Racicot in person, not too often, that a Stanley Cup winner I heard he's very approachable. So if you do meet him, shake his hand and thank him so much, because it takes all kinds to make a championship team. And could we have gotten a better backup at the time? Sure, but for what the coaching staff saw in him, he was maybe the cost efficient goaltender. Not to misquote, our famous movie where he said the cost efficient reporter. Anyway, Andre Racicot, I'll leave it to you guys to decide, but for me, he's no Doug Favell, he's no Michel Plasse, he's no Wayne Thomas, and he's no friggin' Gary Smith. Gary Smith was never a backup, but he was much worse than Andre Racicot. But again, it's New Year's, pre-New Year's week. Have a great time, everybody. And as Andre Racicot liked to say, and did most of the time, keep your stick in the ice. Bye.